Hey guys, welcome back to the High School Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be looking over a short story in this James Joyce book, Dubliners. I'm Ben Rudder.
And I am Ricardo Mariquin, and here we also have...
Yo, what's up? I'm Braden.
Today's story that we're going to be looking over is called Two Gallants, from his collection of, I believe it's around 15 short stories, all taking place in Ireland during the famine in the 1800s, the potato famine. So to start off with a summary here, we start off with a scene between our two main characters, Lenahan and Corley, walking down the street, having just a conversation about life. Corley is talking about women specifically, talking about maids, how he's often been with maids or prostitutes or whatever.
That Corley and Lenahan were talking about a woman who they want to seduce so that they can get money off of her, not specifically off of her, but we're told
employer.
that her employer, that the woman works for a wealthy person or just as a servant. So Lenahan and Corley were just talking about that. So Corley is the one who will do the actual job and get the money, while Lenahan is just waiting. So later in the story, when Corley takes the woman out to like a date, Lenahan is just has to stay at the bar. And while he stays there, he's having doubts about the whole operation. He's kind of having like some trust issues with Corley.
Yeah.
And just starts contemplating life and what his life is at right now. Him being at his late 30s, I believe, and not having a stable job. He's just trying to, he's wishing that he had a better life than what he has right now.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you can go.
So just throughout the middle of the story, he's walking around Dublin. Like he said, he's almost like contemplating his life. He's just thinking about everything. He also imagines, what it would, at some point he imagines what it would be like to just have a home where he could, sit by the fire or have a wife or whatever. And he walks around, he eats, he doesn't do much, and then near the end of the story, he begins to worry about Corley's plan, what he's doing, and when he sees Corley at the house that he was told to arrive at, he becomes nervous because Corley is not responsive to him. He is hanging out with that woman, but he is not really responding to anything that Lenahan's saying, even though he calls out his name and all. So that end of the story, I know I found like kind of anxiety inducing because he's like chasing him down the sidewalk, like speed walking, until Corley turns, looks at him, and he shows him that coin that he got from her smiling, and that's the end of the story.
At the end they just add some, like, the author adds some tension so that like the reader can just like be, like you said, kind of anxious to see what's going to happen at the end, and then just the climax of knowing if Corley actually pulled the job off. And we are told that he is. So that's the short summary of the Two Gallants. All right, so one of the main themes throughout the whole story is just kind of this use of irony, because the title of this short story is called The Two Gallants. The description of a gallant is just kind of a gentleman type person, and all throughout the story we are described two people that are nothing but gentlemen. Some examples of this can be when Corley's just talking about the woman as a fine tart, suggesting that she might be some kind of prostitute or someone that's not very well-minded, I guess.
More vulnerable, like just objectification. Yeah,
and it's just like he wants to take advantage of her instead of like being a gentleman, right? So and then Lenahan, which he's also not the greatest gallant of all. He wishes to be. I think the Lenahan like wants to be a gallant, but his current situation is just the complete opposite. I don't think he's like as bad as Corley, but he is also not. He's not also not like the purest and best person either.
Yeah,
So
definitely not. He's also like he seems to be much more mournful of like I guess the decisions he's made that led him to this place, but I think it also ties into the entire concept that's throughout Dubliners and also like very prevalent in this story of moral decay in Ireland during the famine, like kind of what I mentioned earlier. You know, it's just a dark place in general. He walks around Ireland. At one point, you know, he eats a plate of like peas, like you know that's all he gets, and he feels like a completely new person after that. He like
mhm.
he I mean, he probably hasn't eaten in a very long time, you know, and it's like I don't know. I just thought that it was interesting the fact that just like eating a meal, something that we would consider entirely normal here, is
A normal meal that we see here is just a surprising and like big thing for Lenahan
yeah,
in
exactly,
story. Yeah, because you were saying about moral decay. It's just everything is just kind of lowered, or the standards are just lowered
exactly.
of the
Yes.
people around Ireland. So
And another thing I was gonna say, was that you were talking about the irony of the title, and I think that can also play into this because moral decay can also mean that in the sense that people are lowering their standards. You know, the woman that Corley is talking to, or at least one of them that he mentioned, thought that he was like a man of class. You know, when
definitely,
he very clearly is not. I don't think there are very many men of class here, but she sees somebody like him who we can tell is not, I don't know what the right word is, like not a great influence.
yeah, not like a yeah, influence, yeah, an
Yeah, he's not
influencer.
like a great person to be around in general, especially not during a time right now. Maybe that was more accepted back then, but the point is, I think these both of these characters, especially Corley, are designed to be seen as kind of like despicable, and the fact that this woman is like completely oblivious, also, I think is symbolic of that moral decay, the desperation that just everybody's facing in their own way in Ireland during this time period.
Yeah, definitely. I really think that Corley and like Lenahan like symbolizes like just how the times were back in
Exactly.
Ireland. They just symbolize the common, or like the normal person in Ireland, which like their lives were like kind of like rush or like tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Very
yeah, like you
prolific.
said, it just adds a lot to the moral decay of this whole series of short stories that yeah, they're just kind of painted as kind of gray, but there's also this ongoing theme of like having this small sort of like hope or gain
Yeah.
um in some stories. In others they're just like straight up
That's true.
just bad. Yeah,
Like
but like in
Lenahan, I don't know. He kind of has like a little bit of hope, but at the same time, he's like sadly wishing that maybe one day he'll have like a normal life again, a peaceful life. But I don't know if he is really hopeful of it as much as he is just like sad that he doesn't have that life.
yeah, that's true. And that's just adding to the misery of this whole place.
Yeah, like, well, I think for us, it's like accepting, it's like being grateful for the little things, but for them, like the little things are all that they have, you know.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's not
true.
like the
Yeah.
same.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Definitely from a different point of view. A lot of blindness, I'll say, you can add about what they think it's a great thing, but based on
Oh
their
yeah.
situation and all the things that are happening around them, make them blind in a way that makes them good things they have are just really like some small or miserable things to us.
Yeah, that's true.
I found a very good representation of isolation and like kind of like a mix of frustration and also like an anxious feeling at the end, basically when Lenahan is just like wandering around Dublin passing time. He's not really talking to anybody, and then he stops into a bar and grabs some food, and while he's having the food, because he's so isolated, he's in his own head, and that's when he starts like contemplating his life, like wishing for his steady job or even his steady home life. And I think that that's a very powerful message behind isolation. And I also noticed that when he leaves the bar to meet Corley, when they talk about him smoking the cigarette, he's very, very anxious and worried that Corley might have cut him out of the plan entirely. But then when he finally sees Corley with the coin in his hand showing that the plan worked, Lenahan doesn't have to worry about this anxious feeling anymore because it already happened and there's nothing that he can do about it. And I'm sure that at that point he's just feeling this huge sense of frustration because the plan was like he got cut out of it, but at the same time it's also feeling success because it actually worked.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and also like what you said at the beginning when Lenahan was just thinking about life, he stumbled upon like this sort of paralysis. Basically, throughout the description of him being at the bar, where he's just like thinking of like a good future or like a good life that he could have or he wishes he had, with like a family or with like a stable job with a wife and stuff, and so he's just like kind of stuck in this place. He feels like he's stuck in this place where he has to do this sort of bad or just not moral thing, which is just like stealing, right? And he still feels bad about it. Not like Corley I think is just like he accepted this way of life, but Lenahan is just like wanting to change his life, but he's just stuck and has a paralysis and
Corley has become desensitized to the lifestyle while Lenahan is still like transitioning into it, I guess, which isn't a good thing, but yeah. So, favorite lines. So, throughout this story, I think it was written very well. A little bit hard for me to read just because some of the language I didn't perfectly understand, and it was just a lot of, I don't know, sentences I wasn't used to reading that I normally read. So, I think my favorite line, I had a few that were contenders, but I'm going to go with the one that says, as they're walking into the streets of Dublin after having their conversation, making their plan to acquire the money. It says, the two young men walked up the street without speaking, the mournful music following them, and this music is coming from the harpist, who's playing this sorrowful tune, and as they walk through the city, it follows them. And imagery wise, I can just imagine, or I guess more like in a movie, I can just imagine these people walking down the street. Likely surrounded by like starving people. Everybody here is in the same situation, just living a life of desperation, and this music just follows them wherever they go, almost like disaster or like criminal behavior or just like, what's the word,
like misery and stuff.
Like misery. I'm trying to think of like a word to describe their behavior.
Like they are the ones who are
degeneracy, like almost. Yeah. Like just following them around wherever they go, and they can't really escape it. Like this is how they have to live during this time, and they really have no other option.
Definitely. Like they're stuck in there. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
I like that. For me, one of my favorite lines in the story is when Lenahan is in the bar, and he's just thinking about everything, and one of his lines was, in his imagination he beheld a pair of lovers walking along some dark road. He heard Corley's voice in deep energetic gallantries, and saw again the leer of the young woman's mouth. His vision made him feel keenly his own poverty of purse and spirit. And I think this also kind of like relates to yours, honestly, because he's like imagining this sort of like a better life in a better situation to be in. But then he's also followed again with Corley's voice, which you can relate to this current situation. So he's trying to leave this world and go into a fictitious paradise. But then he is yet again reminded of like Corley and what he is actually doing. So yeah, like his fantasy here was like just having two lovers, right? Maybe him and someone else, but then he gets reminded of the two quote unquote lovers that are Corley and the woman, who Lenahan knows exactly what Corley's doing with her. So yeah, I think that's just a very very interesting, and it's one of my favorite lines. So
For my favorite line, it's she's on the turf now. I saw her driving down Earl Street one night with two fellows with her on a car. And then Lennon responds, I suppose that's your doing. And then Corley finishes it off by saying there was others before me. And I just really liked this line because to me it like sticks out on its own because it just seems so like I don't know how to describe it, but it feels like it kind of just like hits close to me just in general. Like he had his chance and then he lost it, and then he's aware that he lost it, and he was aware that he was kind of like falling behind, and it is basically his fault for losing it. And I just think that's like a very cool and like powerful line, especially coming out slightly in the beginning of a story. So yeah.
yeah, that's basically it for the story of Two Gallants. I think it was a very interesting story, and it makes you think a lot about your current situation and what you are living through right now. Yeah, it was full of like themes and like moral decay, and it's just a very fascinating story to have read and analyzed.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, getting more into like literature, reading and stuff in general, I found the way it was written very unique. Just the way that he like described the characters thoroughly, and the setting and the imagery conveyed, I think, really contributed to the entire grim setting that this entire story takes place in. And yeah, I think that's all. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the High School Podcast.
See you guys.